Hey guys, it's Lee here with Tooth of the Arrow Broadheads. Today we're going to talk about common points of failure on arrows. So after hunting season, after you've shot some animals, hopefully, you want to check over your arrows to see which ones are good to put back in your quiver for next year. And there's a number of common points of failure that you need to check on an arrow, and we're going to go over them today. So we'll start from the back of the arrow to the front. The first thing you want to check after hunting season, especially if you're hunting in the cold, and your arrows are frozen, is the knock. It's not uncommon for when the plastic gets really cold and frozen for these to break, chip, or bend or crack when they hit something hard. If you hit bone, if you hit a tree, if you hit a rock, it's not uncommon at all for these to break. So check them for cracks, check them to see if the knock fit seems normal. I've seen sometimes the knock will pinch or open up a little bit. If there's anything wrong with it whatsoever, just pop it off. You can usually twist and pull it off with your fingers like that. Sometimes they're a bit tricky, and you need to use some pliers. The next thing to look at is the vanes. Now, there's two typical setups in regards to how you can replace vanes if there's an issue. There is a lot of arrows that have the vane directly glued to the carbon like this one, and then there is the setup such as mine, which the arrows have an arrow wrap and then the vanes are on top of the arrow wrap. Now that's a nice setup because if you cut a vane, you shoot through one gets bent. Sometimes if you have a pass through of something hard, it can make the vanes kind of wobbly. You can strip the entire wrap, all the vanes come off, and you're left with basically a brand new shaft. If you have the vanes just glued directly to the carbon, you have to use an arrow scraper or a vane scraper, which is shaped to the curvature of the arrow shaft, and it will take the vane and all the glue off for you, clean it really well, and you can refletch. Now, I have shot arrows that have vane issues before. Sometimes when you're practicing, you'll shoot an arrow into another vane, and I've tested them. I don't see a big difference in small things like that making them fly improperly. But you know, as a good practice at the end of the season, any vane issue I see, I will fix and replace the vanes. But if it's just something small, you get a like cut in the vane or something, I wouldn't worry about it in season. So the next thing you want to do is you always want to spin your arrows. This is the most crucial thing you can do that will tell you if there's an issue, and you're looking for wobble. So particularly in the tip here, when we spin the arrow on an arrow spinner, you don't want to see any movement whatsoever. So this is a bit of an old shot up head that I've used for practice. It's a good one to spin and see if there might be an issue with it. But as you can see, when we spin it, there is no movement whatsoever on the tip. It'll be pretty obvious. If there is, you'll look at this tip here and it will not be spinning. You can even put your finger on it and feel just how perfectly square that is spinning. It'll be very obvious if there is some wobble, and if there is, there's a few things you need to look at as to where that wobble might be coming from. The first thing to look at if you're having some wobble would be the shaft. Shafts can bend. Typically carbon shafts like this don't bend that often. Some of the aluminum shafts or the aluminum core shafts, they're more prone to bending. But if you are spinning your arrow, you can move the arrow up and down the spinner and you'll feel if there is a wobble in it. But this is how I would check to see if the wobble you're experiencing is in the shaft. You will feel it on your hand. It won't roll. Much like how if you were to roll a pool cue on a pool table, that's how a lot of pool players check if their cue is straight. You'll feel the wobble in the same way on your spinner. The next thing to check would be the head itself. Field points can bend, broadheads can bend. Sometimes poorly manufactured components won't spin right out of the box, so it's a good idea to spin them, spin every broadhead before you go hunting with them too. So you can always, if you are having an issue, pop your broadhead off, spin it with a brand new broadhead that you know will spin, and that can isolate what might be an issue. Once again, here we see a perfect spin. This is a brand new broadhead. So if neither of those are the issue, the last place that's a common point of failure that people often overlook is the insert itself. If you're using stainless steel or brass inserts, they don't bend that often, but they still do. I'm using an aluminum insert this year, and these absolutely can bend. So that will be your most likely point of failure. Now, unfortunately, if the insert is bent, or the outsert half-out system, which I have here, is bent, there's not a lot you can do about it. So typically what I've seen guys do is they'll cut off the arrow and put a new insert on it and use it as a kid's arrow or a practice arrow or something like that. But there's honestly not a lot you can do if the insert itself is bent. So that about wraps it up for how to check over your arrows before, during, or after hunting season to see that they're still in shooting shape. The last thing you want to do is shoot an animal, make a bad shot, and wonder why the heck it happened, just to find out that you had some wobble in your arrow. It's a disaster. So my whole process of checking an arrow takes 15 seconds per arrow. All you need is an arrow spinner. And you can keep your arrows going for a long time if you check them and assess where the issue might be and fix the necessary parts. You can keep a dozen arrows going for quite a long time. So I hope you guys learned something today. Thanks for watching, and of course, any questions, comments, let us know below. Thanks.